I imagine they're all like 3 feet tall. I don't think there's an official kaiju height guide, but they're like little guys.
Hi everybody, I'm Dan B. Mintin, and I do be Mintin, and welcome to Beyond the Mint, the podcast where we take a deep dive every episode with an awesome creator in the Web3 space. Today we're joined by Tyler from Kaiju Cards. He's the lead game designer at Kaiju Cards, an awesome Web3 game. Tyler, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I want to get into Kaiju Cards because it's an awesome project. Very cool stuff that you guys have going on there. But I'd love to know a little bit about your background. Tell me about how you got started in design and game design and how that led you to kind of where you are now.
Yeah, I have like an art background. I went to school for animation at CalArts, which is a like animation school. And yeah, I like worked as a concept artist and ZBrush artist for a long time too. And like a very conventional 3D animation background and interest, and mainly really just do 2D right now because that's what the game is.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the way, you got into crypto and NFTs?
Yeah. Well, it goes back further than that because like in like 2013, I had a friend who like built a mining rig in his apartment in Boston. And the reason why he was able to do so and like make a profit is because it was unmetered electricity. So he didn't have to pay for electricity based on his consumption. It was just like a flat fee every month because it's like a Boston home from like the 1940s. And the wiring reflected that, and there was like no way to tell who was using what power. So we had like a full Bitcoin mining rig in 2013. And I was like, this is so funny and novel and insane.
You see a problem, I see free electricity.
I started like learning more about crypto and taking, I guess, an interest. I don't know. An interest is like more serious of a term. It was just like a novel curiosity.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you had some friends that were kind of into crypto, and then you started this project?
I mean, we're just people who are like interested in like gaming and min-maxing and making spreadsheets and doing all that stuff. And I feel like all that translates to like Web3 pretty well. And we were like, what if we just made a game within Web3? And we did that. And now it's Kaiju Cards. Now it's out. And life is really weird. It takes you unexpected places.
That's the best kind of story, though.
Yeah.
So you have unexpected success, right? That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't do anything professionally until 2020 when I started doing some like NFT stuff on the side.
So you were all kind of talking about how you could maybe do something in the space or just try to kick off a fun NFT project?
We just thought it would be like a good time to launch a project. It seemed like socially at that point, it felt like a good move to do and would be fun. And I mean, it was like during the pandemic too,
Still sick, I ain't talking the pandemic.
which I think helps contextualize it a lot too. Or just like most conventional forms of industry that we'd been working in were starting to crumble in some capacity. I was also doing a lot of like live concert stuff in 2020. And that was not a great year for live concerts, nor was 2021. So just like looking for other like ways to monetize my skill sets. This is one that presented itself at that time.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was hard times then. And yeah, it just felt like a good time culturally to get in.
For sure. Yeah. 2021 was an excellent time to launch a new NFT project.
Gangbusters.
Yeah, it's funny how things change so much. I mean, like, who knows the future of like any of this, but I just feel like it's such like a rapid space, and much like .com or whatever, just like no one really know like what it was, and there's just all this like hype. And I mean, VR I feel like had like a similar arc in the 2010s where it's like still like very much an industry and people are doing cool new stuff in it, but it's like, yeah, these things like tend to bubble up and come back and go through like cycles. And yeah, I have no idea what the future of like Web3 cycle is going to be. It'll be interesting to see for sure.
So did the art come first, or how did that kind of evolve?
Yeah, the art came first. And then the idea to make it a card game came later because we wanted to have more like gameplay, and we're excited about the prospect of doing like a real game people could play and get into. As opposed to something that was just like sort of like a gimmicky idler, which I think is still like a cool idea and would have been a lot easier to do. But I mean, it's mostly just like the means that we had at the time, right? Like we didn't think we could make an interesting project in the way we wanted to, but we felt like we could make a card game. And we were wrong about that too, but we eventually figured out how anyways, so it's okay now. But yeah, at the time, it was tough to make that decision. We ultimately went with the card game. Mostly out of practicality, and like we thought the game design elements would be like fun to do.
I see. I think those are Warhammer.
Yeah, they sure are. Yeah, there's a lot of them.
Love it. You obviously have a background in different kinds of games. So how did that inform your decisions with Kaiju Cards and where it is now? And
I mean, the game was made as a tabletop game originally, not like as its final intended state, but it's just easier to do like prototyping that way. But I'm like not a dev in the conventional sense. So yeah, like I just did everything from a game design perspective by making physical cards and like playing with them and being like, well, this card should do this. And then the actual developers would be like, that's an insane task to code. We can't have one that does that. So then we'd go back to the drawing board and restructure stuff. And that was the process early on of figuring it out. And the reason why we wanted to make it feel like a tabletop game is, I mean, like from a design sensibility, it's like the kind of games I've played the most. And I felt like I would be like the most competent at trying to design. And then B, yeah, everyone on the team is like pretty interested in kind of, if not tabletop, very like grindy games.
what do you mean by that?
I mean, like League of Legends, or I know there's like a lot of people on the team that play competitive fighting games and stuff too. Like anything with like a lot of number crunching and like analysis, which is like something inherent to tabletop games because you do all the math yourself. And a lot of people apply it to video games too, where you just like very thoroughly analyze the move set and like rules of the game. So, I mean, it helped a lot from the game design perspective because I felt like mechanically we could all pitch in. Having that background, the thing that made the most sense at the time was like making a card game. The other thing that we were debating trying to do is like a position-based tactics game. But those are like pretty hard to balance and build.
When I first heard your idea for giant Jenga, I was skeptical.
And how big is the Kaiju Cards team now?
Well, I mean, like in the beginning there was like 5, but for most of the life cycle, it's been between like 9 and like 13 or so.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
That's great.
It's a pretty small team.
So like very organic growth then. I mean,
Yeah,
what was the
yeah,
first
definitely.
step in launching Kaiju Cards? Like how did you get it out there?
Just hitting up people that we knew, sharing stuff with them, and then they would share with other people.
Caring is caring. I thought you might say that.
I mean, the marketing was like easier to do then too. I feel like it was pretty organic just through like Twitter. It doesn't even technically exist anymore.
X.
It's just very funny how much, the world changes in like 2 years. I mean, that was basically the launch. Was just like very, very organic again, and like people knowing other people from like other projects that had met through like online spaces or whatever. People are still very online now, but I think then too, it was peak pandemic. So culturally, I think things were spreading even faster due to like how much people were just like on social media all day. And the newness of the space too,
Right.
and like initial hype in the first few months of NFT stuff getting real big.
Yeah. Can you tell me more about how Kaiju Cards works? Just like a general overview of the gameplay. Like what is it similar to? What would you compare it to? Obviously it's different and new, and that's why we're talking, and I'm really excited about it. It's a very cool project. But just so people can have some context as like a frame of reference, what would you kind of compare it to?
It's comparable to a lot of popular trading card games. The big thing that's different is that we incorporate a lot of like JRPG mechanics too. It's like a character collector game with cards that express your character's abilities instead of like summoning creatures or whatever, which is not a concept that's like completely unique to us, but definitely like not something that many games do. Compared to the number of like just conventional TCGs with like creatures and stuff that exist. We want to push it beyond like referencing other stuff that's existed and can actually like experiment with the game design a bit more and create something that we feel is cool and unique mechanically. Outside of the Web3 component, like just
Sure.
in terms of card design and how interactions between characters happen. I think we want to make it more random and have like a sense of whimsy to it that other games in that genre don't often carry, mechanically and visually.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So currently Kaiju Cards is on Arbitrum.
Yep. Yeah, it is.
And previously, you guys were building on Solana and then transferred the entire game structure over to Arbitrum.
It was a lot of work, not for me, but for other people, it was a lot of work. Yeah.
But can you tell me a little bit about like the rationale behind that change?
I mean, it was really mostly just because we had a partnership with Treasure It was a company that we decided to work with. I don't know when planning of the partnership started now, but within the past like 4 or 5 months, probably. And we started ramping up to do the bridge shortly after, mostly because we felt like other games that we saw as like equivalents or could potentially share like a common user base were popping up more on Arbitrum and like Treasure ecosystem stuff than on Solana. And there's a lot of like cool games on Solana, but I feel like it's like sort of a different. Frankly, most of them have like a lot of money, which we don't. We're definitely like a small, like indie, scrappy team, and a lot of the Solana games are like big boys with big funding and like 3D, or just have like dynamics that we felt like we couldn't compete with in the way that we wanted to. I mean, it's not that like Solana is like a platform where that kind of game can't exist. We felt like it would just be easier to acquire support with Treasure and Arbitrum. And that was the main decision for that. I mean, like it was a decision made by people that aren't me. But yeah, I was like involved, and I mean, so far so good. I'm like happy we did it.
It's done.
Can you talk a little bit about how you're approaching game design to kind of stand out a little bit differently? So I asked you kind of what things you could compare it to, and you mentioned kind of some of these other TCGs. You have popular mechanics incorporated that other people would be able to relate to. But specifically, could you talk a little bit about in what ways you're approaching the game design for this blockchain game that makes it different?
Yeah. Well, we want to have the characters be like visually unique from each other, which is that's like the baseline typically of like this sort of game, right? But a thing that most games don't do that we wanted to really push is that all the characters are like mechanically unique too. If not completely, like mostly. Like there's a lot of mechanical variance. It's not just like, oh, your character like is more rare because it looks different. Mechanically, it does something different, and that can affect its trading value and stuff. It's like a hard thing to balance too. And we want to incentivize ways in which people can use their characters without just being like the conventional gotcha ladder of like, if you have all legendaries, you just like auto win and get the highest score. Currently, the game is like definitely featuring a lot of higher stat kaiju are doing better mechanics, but we want to have things like leaderboards for different tiers of characters. So like maybe you can only use commons here.
I have to believe that it holds some secret strategy. This card is useless.
Like you just have to like use commons in the most interesting way. And it's not just like I have the common with the most stats, so I win. It's my common starts with this card. Like the different characters have different like starting cards in their deck. And then like my common starts with like this card, my other common starts with this card, and my other common starts with this card. And with those, I created like a weird synergy that I had to play a lot to figure out. I'm being rewarded for my ingenuity, even though they might have like worse stats than other characters. Currently, there's a battle pass system. We want to push that to reward players for doing things besides just having the beefiest kaiju possible. I want to point out this just to make it clear that like mechanically, like yes, some are higher strength, higher health than others, but we also want them to have abilities that vary a lot outside of those raw number parameters and have like unique card pools and other things that make owning your specific kaiju like pretty cool compared to other ones out there. So yeah, a lot more like variance than I think other games do.
That's great. Very cool.
Yeah.
Also, can you tell me what a kaiju is? Where did the name come from? And what does kaiju mean?
We thought of it pretty quickly, but this is a Japanese word for monster. It typically implies like a big Godzilla type guy, right? Ours are little, I imagine they're all like 3 feet tall. I don't think there's an official kaiju height guide, but they're like little guys. So yeah, that's the name.
I love the name, and I love the logo because you guys have a killer logo. It's very cool.
Yeah, thanks.
So really, your role is to create the characters and create the game mechanics.
Right, yeah.
How do you plan for like scaling in the future, like expansions or other things? Is that just something that has to be balanced again in the future?
We want to add the remaining characters to the game. There's like 23 like different species of character. There's only 3 currently playable in the game. There's like more you encounter as like enemies and stuff, but all of the ones you encounter as enemies will be playable too. And they are all going to have like unique properties about them that make them mechanically different from each other. And after those are all done, we want to scale this game into other things that you can use your current characters for. So we might do like a tower defense game or like a positioning based like tactics game where you can use like the same characters you currently own in some capacity in those too. So the end goal is to make like a whole ecosystem of games. We might make a cozy game like Idler type thing. We might do something where you're just sending your kaiju on quests to do stuff, and it's like an inventory management turn-based strategy game or something. We might do something real time too. But yeah, we really want to have a lot of the things that we're setting up now translate to other games down the line. We're being like very cautious about that pipeline stuff. And then the thing that would unify them is they're all like branded in like the Kaiju universe, and you can use your assets from this game and those games too.
You become part of a bigger universe. You just don't know it yet.
Right now, where are you guys at in terms of like a launch or gameplay? Are you in beta still, or?
So we're in alpha now. The game is playable. If you go to play.kaiju.cards, you'll see it. It's all there. Yeah, you can buy characters, you can play with them. It is like in alpha, but it's a fully playable game.
And you already have a rabid group of fans that are already in your Discord.
Yeah, we have a nice little community. It's great. Yeah.
I mean rabid in a good way.
No, I got you. You're fine. Yeah.
They're very excited about Kaiju Cards, and then count me as one of the fans. You guys have a lot of cool things going on. Great artwork, great gameplay,
Nice.
and it's really interesting. So that's awesome to have that community, that loyal community that you've built. And yeah, excited to see what the future holds with Kaiju Cards. So where can people find you? It's Kaiju is spelled Kaiju.
Correct. Yeah.
Cards.
Yep. Kaiju.cards.
There's a .cards domain extension.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't even realize that.
When we saw there was a .cards, we were like, yeah, we should definitely use
That's awesome.
that one. Yeah.
And then one last question for you. So where do you see the future of like Web3 and games and cool things happening on the blockchain going in the future?
I think there's some people trying to do some very cool things, and I hope they all make it. And I hope the space becomes something that is more like accessible. I think a huge constraint for it right now is that it's like very hard to get randos into the gaming space, at least. There's like a lot of hurdles technically that have to be overcome.
Normies.
Normies? Yeah.
You ever been with a normie?
I've never found one that could handle me.
Another VR comparison. I feel like VR suffered more or less the same fate, which is like once you have the headset working, it's cool, but you have to have like a pretty big space to set it up. And then B, like the sensors are like sort of difficult to calibrate for normie gamers. Even wearing the headset was like annoying enough for some people, never mind like having their own like home setup with all the finesse required. And I understand that VR is like a very hard thing to make easy. And I know a lot of people tried really hard to make it as easy to pick up and put on and plug and play as they possibly could. And Web3 has the same issues, but
Nothing but problems.
I really hope to see a future where the barriers to playing a game like this are cool. And I hope people do it for reasons other than, I mean, because it definitely became sort of cash grab, and it started off as something that felt like it could have been like very cool and allowed people to like actually control their assets and like trade them with their friends without having a Steam type interface or whatever that just like ultimately owns them at the end of the day, or like a mobile game would be where you can't trade anything and it's all just bound to your account forever. And that's by design. Yeah, I don't know. I hope that version of it can still exist.
No, I totally agree with you. I actually have an article about this coming out about how mobile games have sometimes gone out of business, and people who spent lots of money on these mobile games no longer have access to any of their assets because they're controlled by the company who owns the game.
Right.
But if these were blockchain assets like NFTs, potentially they could at least still look at these items that they spent money on and have them and maybe have some interoperability in other games.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if the company that finances your game goes out of business, then I don't know what you'll be able to do with your stuff long term, but it'll be cool to like look at them at least, I guess. But
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it still feels like an issue here and certainly has been for some companies so far. Yeah, I mean, the option to like still own them regardless of what the company chooses to do with their product in the future is cool.
Exactly.
And I mean, I think it helps companies too. And that like, I mean, I know like second hand like market fees are becoming less of a thing, but initially at least it seemed cool. Like, I mean, a huge problem with like Magic the Gathering is that Wizards of the Coast doesn't make money off of secondhand sales. There's no way to like control any of that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. And so they have to like change their product model to compete with the secondhand market, which hurts everyone. But if you could let people do whatever they wanted on the secondhand market, and you were able to like still make some amount of money, enough to like sustain your business at least off of it, then that has a lot of potential upsides for the structure of like how card games are played.
Smart contracts can fix this.
Yeah.
Well, Tyler, I'm really excited about Kaiju Cards, and thanks so much for coming on and explaining how it works and your role in it, and congratulations on all the success so far. I wish you the best in the future, and let's stay in touch. I'm definitely following this project, and yeah, I hope the audience does too, because you guys are doing some amazing things. So thanks for being on Beyond the Mint.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sounds good.
See ya.
Bye.